In this episode, we are going to be reviewing Shoot the Piano Player from 1960, which was directed by Francois Truffaut. He also adapted the screenplay along with Marcel Moussy, and the novel Down There was written by David Goudis. The cast includes Charles Aznavour, Marie Dubois, Nicole Berger, and Michel Mercier. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a video podcast where I explore movies from all over the world and talk about how those stories were told on film. I want to welcome today Kate Gabrielle, who has an incredible online store where she has artwork, lapel pins, patches, 90s nostalgia kits, jewelry, buttons, t-shirts, and they're all designed by her. And I really, really highly recommend you checking out this store. Kate, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
How did the store? How long have you been designing all the different accessories?
Well, I started out doing outdoor art shows where I would sell like art prints and things like that, pretty much right out of high school. And then I started my first Etsy shop in 2008, I want to say. And that started out as art prints too. And then eventually I started realizing like, not that many people buy art prints, but when I started adding accessories and things people sort of like use more in their daily life, my sales picked up a little bit. So it sort of transitioned from art prints to being a lot of like the patches and buttons and things like that. I still sell art prints, but they're not what pay the bills.
Right, yeah.
It's the lapel pins.
Oh, is that right? Do you have anything that is, I noticed you had like an Antoine Douinel shirt. Do you have anything else that's like Truffaut or French film based?
I do have a little lapel pin that says Francois Truffaut, and I have a patch that says Truffaut fan club. I have a Godard fan club patch too, but
cool.
I'm more in the Truffaut fan club personally. I like Godard, but
yeah, I prefer Truffaut myself. What got you into Truffaut to begin with?
I actually don't remember. I think it might have been Jules and Jim. I know my dad had the Hitchcock Truffaut book. So growing up, I always saw that on the bookshelf, and I loved when I opened it up, there was like the one spread that had like the scene by scene thing from Psycho. I remember just like looking through that when I was little. And then when I got into Truffaut, immediately like went to the bookcase to find it and finally like, read it and not just flip through and look at the pictures.
Right. Very cool. What are some of your favorite films of his? So you mentioned Jules and Jim. What are some other ones?
Jules and Jim is my favorite. Shoot the Piano Player, which we'll be talking about, is a favorite. I love Day for Night.
Oh, me too. That is so great.
I like Two English Girls a lot, and The Green Room I feel like is sort of an underrated one, but I love that one. And I felt like
that one.
Oh, it's where he's sort of like he's in it. He's the star. And he's sort of like really attached to the people in his life who've passed away. And it's sort of like creating a wedge between him and the people who are still living. But okay. It was a really beautiful movie though. And I feel like it's an underrated one in his filmography.
Jumping into Shoot the Piano Player, what was your initial reaction to the film, and has it evolved every time you've seen it, your feelings about it?
I think as with every Truffaut movie, I love it a little more every time I watch it. I'll like pick up on little things that I appreciate that I didn't notice before. I love his attention to detail and little small movements, like the way, especially in this movie, he like zooms in on Charles Aznavour's hands a lot, and when he's like indecisive about what he wants to do with his hand, if he wants to knock or ring the doorbell, or
the doorbell,
or like holding Lena's hand, things like that. And I feel like I appreciate all those little things that he does every time I watch a movie of his. I appreciate it a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because he was so interested in people, even when he did these more like, as he said, like this was like an American story, and The 400 Blows was like a very French film, and he wanted to show that he was very influenced by American cinema. And you saw that throughout his career, but he always brought a real interest and focus on people, even within these more genre, plot driven stories. Like I really like the scene early on when his brother falls down, and then he just has this conversation with this guy on the street about the guy's about marriage, and it's like it has nothing to do with the plot, but it's just one of those, it's just those things that happen to people on the street. Like you have those kind of odd encounters and conversations, and then you say, well, why not have an interaction like that? So no, I totally agree that he shows a lot about the ways in which people behave, and it makes you really kind of lean into the different characteristics and behavior. So that's something when I watched Shoot the Piano Player again this time also really popped out to me. You also, I saw when you spoke to Raquel, that video on her YouTube channel, you actually saw Charles Aznavour on stage, right?
Yes, in 2016, he did a night at Madison Square Garden, and it was just one of the highlights of my life, getting to see him live. And he actually, I think, passed away not that long afterwards. He was 92 when I saw him.
Wow.
And it was just like amazing knowing I was in the same room as him.
Yeah.
I actually first like discovered him through Godard, actually, because I loved the song Toute la Soleil in A Woman is a Woman. And so I looked him up after that, after I had seen that, and like started playing his music. And then I eventually found Shoot the Piano Player and was like, oh my gosh, this is the singer that I like so much. And I loved him so much in Shoot the Piano Player. And so it was like, there's so many reasons to love him, and getting to see him live was just unbelievable.
So was this mainly a concert performance, or was it like a Q&A? Yeah. Okay, so so it wasn't a Q&A on him and Truffaut, or?
No, it was just it was a concert, and it was in like Madison Square Garden has like a stadium, and then they also have, I guess, like a smaller, like a more of a intimate theater, and that was where he was. So it was nice too that I felt like I wasn't up close, but like I felt like closer to him than if, when you picture Madison Square Garden, you think of like, a football stadium kind of thing.
Right.
So it was nice, like actually I could like see him, and the whole time, like I was enjoying the show, but just in my brain it was just like, that's Charles Aznavour. He's there, he's in front of me.
That's incredible. So he was mostly a musician, because I don't know much about like other things he acted in. I don't know if he acted in much. I don't know if you would happen to know.
I know he was in a movie before this that I haven't seen it yet, but I have the DVD, and Truffaut saw that movie, and that's where he like decided to cast him based on that performance. Other than that, I think that I know of, there's just like a couple other performances, but I think he's so good in this, it's a shame that it wasn't like the start of a full-blown movie star career.
No, I agree. I mean, he really brought, like, I mean, he clearly either could act shy very well or just was shy, because he just his face said so much in terms of everything that he was experiencing, and also just very, very subtle. Even that little speech he has towards the end where he's talking about his brother throwing the rocks at the car when he was in there with I believe it was a music teacher or someone trying to sign him or had interest in his music career, let's say. And he just had this little smile on his face as he talked about it. Like you can see that he was amused by what his brother did. And he was this character who was sort of conflicted between the two worlds of crime and music. His brother was a criminal and he was a musician. So you can really see that conflict, but it wasn't like he was showing so much or trying to do so much. It was just really in the smallest details in his expressions, and Rich, they've photographed so beautifully. I mean, the DOP Real Coulthard, I believe that's how you pronounce it, in Truffaut. I mean, I thought they just brought that out so well. I don't know how you felt about that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's so subtle, everything, his whole performance. I even love when he's walking down the hallway for the audition, and he has this like sort of large coat on. It just
Yeah.
looks a little like too big for him. And he just was walking so like you could just sense how nervous he is going into the interview. And then he gets up to the door and that's when he does like the, oh, I don't think I can knock. And it just that the way he even just walks, it's like a subtle nervousness.
Yes.
I love when he goes to the bookstore and just picks out all of the like how to not be shy books.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was so great because he couldn't he couldn't face all the publicity his manager wanted him to face as he became famous. That was yeah. I thought that was so great. Speaking of that, what's so interesting about this film is that it's like it combines so much with comedy and drama in a story which on paper is like a tragic rise and fall of this guy who loses his first wife and then loses the second woman he falls in love with, and at the end he's totally alone. But it has this wonderful balance with comedy. I was curious, I imagine you feel that worked well, but can you
Yes.
why do you feel that way? Because I know at the time, he was saying in France Truffaut that the audiences were never laughing at the funny parts and people just didn't get it. So why do you feel that works in your view?
For me, I mean, it might be partially that I appreciate him as a filmmaker so much that a lot of times when I watch his movies, I sort of almost like picture him enjoying making it, if that makes any sense. And like knowing how much joy he probably got out of even the gangster kind of like rougher scenes, like when towards the end someone like punches through a window to put their gun out. And I thought like after having watched all the American crime movies, for him to like
those
film
cliches.
that scene, he must have been like, and we're gonna punch through the window, and must have enjoyed it so much. But then just you get the sense even in the darker like sequences that this was a movie where it was just like a joy to produce it. And so I feel like even though it fluctuates back and forth, it just seems like you're having fun the whole time, even when it's darker. So for me, it's like, it's a light experience to watch this movie.
I think it could have been I think the book is likely, just from what I heard about the book, which takes place in Philadelphia, as I'm sure you know, it's an American story. Oh, you have the book, great.
Yeah.
How is the book? I imagine, is the book quite heavy?
It actually reminded me a lot of the movie. It's I haven't read it in a couple of years, but I read it actually for Raquel's classic film book challenge a couple years ago. And a lot of it was written in a way that felt like it was a script. Like you were seeing a movie play out in the book. So when I read it, I felt like I could imagine Truffaut reading that and being like, this is a movie. It was very, very similar. I think the main difference, I don't think Fido is in the book.
The young brother, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
okay.
I think I had heard, that like Truffaut loved working with kids so much that he added a little brother. But
okay.
But I think other than that, it was very, very similar. And I felt like obviously Truffaut did a great job of bringing the story to life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because that's always a very difficult balance. But I think he succeeded at really making you feel for the more dramatic moments. And this man's story of losing, two women that he loved, losing his career, winding up, playing at more of a dive bar, which he winds up in, and his changing who he is, and he has an alias and runs away from his past life. He really makes you feel that. But then at the same time, he has this, which is basically like a subplot of his brother, who's the whole story is running from these two gangsters and how he's somewhat trying to help him. And then, he gets deeply involved himself. What I like so much is the scenes with the gangsters, because he kind of flipping the cliches. Like what we always see, especially then, was gangsters just being totally serious, totally threatening. And these guys were so funny. I mean, when they kidnap him and his the woman he begins to see that he was worked with, they're talking about, like, they have these ridiculous misogynistic views about women, and oh, women, they always want to talk before and after sex, and why do they dress like this? They're just driving us crazy. And I love what she says when he's like, you're not the first bastard I've met. I mean, it's such a funny scene. That must have been so daring. It reminded me of like years later, like Tarantino was doing that with Pulp Fiction. Like, what do the guys on the way that they hit? What do they talk about? And it's the same here. When they do these kidnappings, what do they talk about? What could they talk about? Even with Fido at the end, they're he doesn't even really seem scared of them. He's sort of like doubting that the guy got his wardrobe that it was made in Japan. He's like, nah, that wasn't made in Japan. So I'm not necessarily. Sorry, go ahead.
That's the scene where you get the great cut in of, he says, like, if I'm lying, my mother dropped dead, and then they cut to the old lady keeling over. That's one of my favorite parts of that movie.
That was so great. And that must, I really wonder if he had any doubts at the time about being able to strike this balance, because I'm not too sure if he necessarily wants you to believe the crime story, the homage, so to speak. I'm not sure. I think it's sort of like he's doing sort of what he did in what he wrote Breathless. I know he didn't direct it, but he's sort of doing that where it's like you're aware that you're watching a movie, you're aware of the form, and it's just being able to breathe and have some fun, and then go back into like Charlie's story, which is the serious dramatic one. I mean, do you think that's perhaps what he was going for?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a movie where they're constantly giving you hints that this is a movie. I love like when he tells Clarice to cover up, and he says, this is what they do in the movies.
Right.
And then I like when they cut to the boss being bribed into giving their addresses, and it's in the 3 like circles. It's like just such an interesting thing. And even where they added this French subtitles for the singer in the bar. Yes. And another scene when they're being followed, and she goes like, look in my mirror, and it's a very clearly like not something you could have actually seen if you held up like, also her hand is like totally still, but the gangsters are walking in the mirror.
Yes, like, I know the shot you're talking about. Yeah,
and it's very like,
it's like cartoonish movie. It's like comic booky.
And I mean, actually, even when he looks for the books about being shy, it just so happens that this bookstore has a display outside that's entirely filled with books about being shy.
I didn't even notice that. You mean the one he picked up? That's right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, like he doesn't have to go in the bookstore and find the shelf on shyness. They just have a little table outside filled with books about being shy.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's something where they want to shoot something a certain way, and it doesn't matter if it's realistic or believable. It's a movie, and they know that it's a movie. So they're going to shoot it for the way they want it to look, and not whether or not you believe that you're watching real events play out. This one is supposed to be just, it's a movie, and we're okay if you know it's a movie.
Right. Well, I think that sometimes what people forget about the new wave was that as much as they were influenced by neorealism, and you see that, of course, and all kinds of like different art film, like they even someone like Bresson, who was French, like they love Robert Bresson, they love Dreyer, and these were like serious artists who really got you invested in their stories. But then on the flip side was like, but we love the American crime stories, and why don't we show that, and why don't we have sort of an homage to this sort of self-conscious filmmaking, like the audience being aware that they are watching a story and then going in and out of that with the more serious parts, which really, the more I thought about it, I was like, wow, that is really, it's not so daring nowadays, because Tarantino's done it, and people, so many imitators, but at the time that was just completely out of this world. There's something in the structure of the film which is interesting, and I'm not sure if this popped out to you, but when we first see Charlie, we see him in this sort of dive bar playing, and so we get the impression that this is who this man is. He's a guy who plays at a dive bar. He's got this brother who's shady. He's a criminal. We see that he's very shy, as you mentioned, when he walks out with the woman who works there, and he can barely talk to her because he's so shy, and he keeps trying to hold her hand and stuff, and he can barely do it. And then immediately we see him with he's really good friends with the prostitute next door. And it's interesting because it sort of breaks what we have already sort of thought about this man. Yeah. And we're seeing him now very not shy at all with this prostitute. And immediately after that, we find out that he's also taking care of we don't know, right? I don't believe we know right then he's his brother, but that he's taking care of a child, whether he's the father or a brother. So he sort of is constantly not letting you get too attached to who this man might be. Whereas in a conventional story, they will introduce the characters and give you a sense. And then when things begin to happen, we'll get an idea as to how these people may react. But in this guy's case, we don't know. And then of course, later on, we find out he's had this whole history. He's living a second life. As you mentioned, because he's so interested in people, it really forces you to pay attention to him and to even all the other characters. I don't know if that ever popped out to you, that how he was sort of misleading you about who this guy was.
Yeah, I actually don't think I did notice that before. I think I interpreted the shyness and around Lena, and then the not shyness around the around Clarice, as that it was sort of emphasizing that he wasn't just romantically shy. It was that he cared about Lena so much that was what was causing the shyness.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
That it wasn't just an ongoing issue for him around women. It was that around this particular woman, he just was crippled with shyness.
Yeah.
Which made their relationship even more special. And I guess it makes it even more when she finally reveals that she knows who he is.
Right.
And to me, it makes it a little less weird when he immediately is okay with that, and kisses her right after she shows him that she has a poster of him in her apartment, because that could have been kind of creepy.
Yes, I know all about you.
That could go in a whole other horror movie direction, where she brings him home and there's just posters of him everywhere.
Yeah, actually that's true. And that kind of plays to the humor of it as well, that she was this huge fan of his. And that's another way he's misleading you. You think that they're just coworkers, and then you have no idea about that she's actually was a massive fan of his fame. I just think I love movies that do that just sort of guide you and mislead. I don't know if he was intentionally misleading you sometimes, or if it's just the nature of what he saw about people in general, that sometimes we think we know someone and then we see a different side to them, and that's just, it's a little more lifelike in that sense. I mean, he said something interesting. He even, just watching some of the special features on Criterion Channel, that he always thinks in terms of pure realism. So he has to go and find these far out stories so he can find a middle ground. I thought that was interesting because 400 Blows is total autobiographical, very neo-realistic film. And this was just, has those elements of a realistic story and characters, but then I see what he means, because then he's adding this kind of far out crazy crime story mixed in. So I don't know if anyone really could do that better than him. I don't know. I don't know if anyone is really like him in that sense.
I feel like it's still somewhat autobiographical though, because he also had that dichotomy of being a very, very shy person.
Yes,
but he had so many affairs. So it is, he is Charlie, walking in the street, not being able to hold Lena's hand, but he's also Charlie just hopping into bed with Clarice.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. It just, again, he's showing you the complexity of people, right? That we contradict ourselves, and we're full of all kinds of behavior that we're not even maybe necessarily aware of, and it kind of makes the audience think more and feel more. So I really, really, really like that. There was another, you probably saw this as well, but there was another little featurette on the Criterion channel where this film professor was talking about the compositions often having two people in the same shot. And it didn't really dawn on me that he was doing that. But now looking back on it consciously, it's true, because you have two stories. He has two different women in his life in the film. There's two murders. Sorry, there's two deaths really. His first wife kills herself, and then the second woman dies at the end. So he constantly had two people, and then at the end, you only see half of him in the frame, and the other half is empty, and there he is alone playing. And I thought that was really, I don't know if that was Rael Coutillard, the DOP's idea, or if it was a combination of the two, but it adds so much to the feel of the story, because that last shot of him just playing all alone, and they have that new waitress there, and he meets her, but then you could tell he's like, I don't want to even have anything to do with this anyone right now, or at least for that moment.
Because critics said the movie wasn't good, or audiences and critics, he believed them and he didn't think the movie was good.
Right.
And they said, whereas Godard, if a movie didn't do well, he would say, well, then the audience doesn't get it.
I love it. I love the ego and the confidence of that.
Yeah.
The other, I found this relationship with his other brother Chico interesting, the criminal type. We don't see much of him. That's the only one of the things in the film that I wish we saw more of him. But it was interesting when he found out that his brother had killed someone. Charlie killed that the guy he worked for. That fight broke out, and he had to stab him. He's like, oh, this is good. He's like, in other words, he sort of always wanted him to be part of their sort of, be partners in crime, so to speak. And he comments that he was glad that he did that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Charlie talks about that experience where they were throwing rocks at the car when he was talking to someone interested in his music career. And again, he was very amused by that. So he certainly had sort of a thuggish nature. We didn't see as much of it. I don't know if you felt that was something you would have wanted to see more of, or if that relationship popped out to you much.
I definitely would have liked to see more of Chico. I like the actor a lot.
He was great.
I like him.
He was a father in 400 Blows.
400 Blows, right? Yeah, I like him. And I feel like he has a bit of that like comic
definitely
like he adds a bit of the comic edge to this, but I liked him and Charles Aznavour together too. I thought their scenes together, there was like one other brother, I don't remember what his name was, where it was like they could have just had the Fido and Chico, and I feel like that would have been fine.
Yeah, because the guy, when they were hiding out from the gangsters following them, the other guy was their brother too, right?
Yeah, it's four brothers.
Yeah,
which actually that was in the commentary. They said they since one of them was named Chico, they think it was an ode to the Marx Brothers, having four brothers with one named Chico. Yeah. So maybe that's why that other brother's there.
Yeah, it must be. He wasn't too necessary. I know what you mean. I was a little confused at first. I'm like, who is this guy that they're talking to? And then you start to put it together. No, it's a really, really wonderful film.
I do feel like though that whole scene there sort of reminds me of Mississippi Mermaid a little bit, and I wonder if like filming those scenes in the snow, if he felt like when he did Mississippi Mermaid, especially since he thought that Shoot the Piano Player wasn't his best work, if he's like, I'm gonna do some snow scenes right.
It could
and
be.
It felt like that was a second chance, because I feel like there's a lot of things that he sort of revisits later.
Yes.
Like I like that in like I think in The Soft Skin they have with the where they put the food outside and the cat comes to drink out of the bowl, and then he brings that back again in Day for Night where they're trying to film it and the cat won't cooperate.
Oh, right.
And like also this one has the women are magic in it, which is another thing that he repeats a lot in a lot of the movies. So it's like I feel like he's always working with some kind of a theme or an idea and then trying to keep like revisiting it and refining it. over time.
Yeah, you're right. He probably got that from Hitchcock, because I know in Hitchcock Truffaut, he would a lot of the times talk about how he, if something didn't quite work, he would try to use it again, or he would just use it again because he liked it or it worked the first time, or he was refining it. So yeah, you're right. You definitely saw that in his work. But it's a really wonderful film. I hadn't seen it in over 15 years, so I didn't really remember. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it, so I remember liking it, and I liked it a lot more this time around. So it's a wonderful film, and if anyone hasn't seen it, you can find it on the Criterion channel. Was there any final thoughts you had on this film?
No, just if somebody hasn't seen it before, definitely watch it. I think it's a delight.
Yes, absolutely. And where's the best place for people to find you online? I know you're kategabrielle.com, right? For the shop.
Yep. And I'm on Twitter, Kate Gabrielle, and Instagram, Kate Gabrielle. Letterboxd, Kate Gabrielle.
Awesome.
It's Great. The same pretty much everywhere.
Nice and simple. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave the links in the description box below where people can get in touch with Kate or order some really great, cool stuff from her online shop. So it's all in the description box below. Kate, thanks so much for taking the time to come on. Please come again sometime.
All right, thank you for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you are currently listening to this on the audio version of this podcast and you've run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode that I've ever recorded can be found. Go to youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo and the movies. I want to also mention that I am also on Patreon. Patreon is an exclusive membership program where people can pay every single month a very low price in order to get bonus content created by me. Now, all of the bonus content is similar to what is on the YouTube channel. However, it is based on polls that I put out at the beginning of every single month, which you can vote on. Therefore, that very much will make you part of the decision-making as to what I record on Patreon every single month. I also have a newsletter and all kinds of cool stuff. So head over to patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. And lastly, if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head right here in the corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new videos or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.